So after that great interview with Ashlyn, we wanted to end the episode on maybe a little bit more of a positive note by bringing you some stories from around the province of what we would consider to be, labor victories, so workers coming out on top through organizing and through struggle. And this first story is pretty recent from May 24th out of Lethbridge. So Starbucks workers in Lethbridge have made efforts to unionize. And essentially, they're advocating for better working conditions, better wages. And it looks like they've been pretty successful so far. They've filed an application for union certification, and that's already a pretty big step in getting the workplace that they have to essentially all agree to join the union. This is a step that wasn't even made possible by Amazon at the warehouse. Most of the workers there didn't get to the point where they're even able to file this application. So pretty big moves for Starbucks, yeah.
Yeah, and Starbucks has been having really good, well, not Starbucks, but Starbucks workers have been having really good success.
There you
or
go,
Starbucks
yeah.
stores have been having really good success in the U.S. In unionizing. And I think what I've heard at least is that they are almost in a better spot to do that than maybe other companies because they do typically have a younger workforce, and they also kind of in their like company brand already maybe try and align themselves with, maybe more progressive or liberal values where the people who go and work there may already be a little bit more on board with something like this. So yeah, it's definitely great to see that. And I don't know, kind of definitely feels like it's kind of part of that broader movement. And it's really cool to see that in Alberta. And yeah, another little piece of news that we wanted to highlight was just this week, Edmonton video game workers vote to unionize, and industry first in Canada. So basically, there's 16 video game development workers in Edmonton that voted to unionize. They actually work for a company based out of Ireland, but their client basically is BioWare. Obviously, everyone knows that's based in Edmonton. So they work with BioWare, but technically they work for that company in Ireland. The video game industry, obviously, everyone also knows is just so common for workers to be overworked, exploited, and then just part of this system of a high churn. So it is really good to see workers standing up for themselves in this industry. And I think there were a few, I don't need to go into like the details here, but basically there were a few key aspects of their negotiations that they really felt were like lacking or that they weren't being provided. And I think a couple of those points actually did get resolved even prior to the actual unionization happening. So I think that's a really good demonstration of how even just the, I guess you could say, threat of unionization creates greater accountability for employers.
No, it really, really does. And in the cases where that threat isn't enough, the great thing is that when you actually do have a union that's established, you can take things beyond the threat and actually go on a strike. So that's the next story that just happened this past January at Concordia, where the faculty at Concordia University in Edmonton launched the first ever faculty strike in Alberta's history at Concordia. So they actually have a union, and yeah, they went forward with it, and the strike didn't last for very long. I think it was about 10 days until they were actually able to come to an agreement with the university to have their demands met. So we're talking about academic staff who were burdened with 3 course per semester course load, on top of their research duties, and with incredibly stagnant wages. This is all happening while the university is seeing very high revenues, and the university went ahead and bought a mansion in Edmonton just for the sake of it, because they could. So yeah, it was really, really nice to see workers at Concordia being able to get that win for themselves, and really using the power that they do have in this really historic way. So yeah, I think within all of the despair, within all of the challenges. There is clearly a lot of hope. There's a lot of people who are getting together, who are fighting back, and some of them are getting results, which is really, really nice to see.
Yeah, it definitely feels good to be able to highlight at least some positives that are happening and that are hopefully part of a broader movement or broader trend. And this story, then, yeah, I guess something else that is doesn't necessarily have to do with unionization, but I guess is more, I guess you could say, personal agency or personal empowerment. Also, I just heard of a story where someone left an exploitative working an exploitative position at a non-profit. So I don't know, maybe you know something about that.
You know what? Yeah, I think I know a few things about this. I've been laughing so much because Nicholas is, of course, referring to me in my own personal work situation. So, yeah, this is gonna be, breaking news first time on the pod. But yeah, I've decided to leave a position that I was working at. And a large reason for my departure was because of my, I guess, the exploitative nature of the work that I was doing. So a situation in a nonprofit environment, which, quite frankly, I think the biggest problem I have with the work that I did was it definitely fit. It served a crucial need. I felt like there was a difference being made with the work that I did. I think it was going towards a population that really needed it. And quite frankly, sometimes we were able to see the change that we were making. But what really came down to it was at what cost, and the cost that came down to really was exploiting workers, was paying workers wages that were quite frankly too low, often justifying this under the banner of working as a nonprofit, as that somehow justifies not making as much revenue or not making as much profit. But then also, I think, continuously burdening workers with more tasks, with more work, with work after hours. So really infringing on all these rights and all these things, again, in the name of this nonprofit mission. So that somehow, if the work that you're doing is going towards a good cause, that work can, cross these boundaries that, in my opinion, yeah, definitely negatively impacted my life as a worker. So with all these things in mind, it's very difficult for me to continue to sign on to, my own exploitation every day, or to, I guess, continue in a position like that. So yeah, I'm calling it quits. And it's not easy to do. If I'm being quite honest, I'm not looking forward to these conversations or, this resignation email. But I think when you're really pushed towards burnout, or when you can't necessarily see I guess a solution on the horizon, these things sometimes it's the best option, truly.
Yeah. Well, congrats, and I'm glad you were able to make that decision. And I think, a lot of what we talk about when we talk about the labor market or worker exploitation is people not even being in a position where they have that kind of agency over their employment situation, and are not in a place where they can choose to leave their current work situation. So yeah, definitely happy that you're able to make that call, and hopefully things will be looking up. And it's been really fun working on the podcast recently. I think we've gotten some good engagement on like socials and stuff. And I think we've been able to touch on a lot of things that we really cared about, and touch on them in ways that are, pretty candid and open. I'm really happy about that. Hopefully hopefully, anyone listening has, resonated with some of the stuff that we've been able to talk about. We are kind of heading into summer here, so I think we are going to be restarting the Patreon, which will be, I guess, at the start of July. So yeah, if you want to support the podcast, you can head over to our Patreon. And I guess we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. I think this me quitting this job is a great opportunity for me to invest more into the podcast. So yeah, I'm excited for that, and hope you keep listening, and we'll see you soon.